Most empires are built on land. Some are built on armies. Many are built on gold. But this one was built on a soul believed to live within a stool, not a throne carved for decoration. Not a symbol of wealth, but a sacred object said to carry the soul of an entire nation. This is the story of the Ashanti Empire, an empire built not just on gold, but on spirit.
The Golden Stool protects us, but we must protect our borders.
The forest belongs to the Asante Hene.
Ghana, West Africa. In the forested heart of what is now modern-day Ghana, a political force rose in the late 17th century that would reshape power across West Africa. It did not begin with invasion. It did not begin with conquest. It began with belief. Among the Akan states of the region, rivalries had long defined political life. Kingdoms competed, alliances shifted, external pressures threatened stability. What changed everything was not simply ambition, but spiritual consolidation. According to Ashanti tradition, the priest and spiritual architect Okomfo Anokye performed a ceremony unlike any before it. Before assembled chiefs, he called down a golden stool from the sky. It descended slowly and settled into the lap of Osei Tutu, the man who would become the first Asantehene. The message was unmistakable. The stool did not belong to Osei Tutu. Osei Tutu belonged to it. The golden stool, Sika Dwa Kofi, was declared sacred. It was never to be sat upon, never to be treated as furniture, never to be reduced to ornament. It embodied the collective sunsum, the spirit of the Asante people, ancestors, the living, the unborn. From that moment forward, unity was no longer political convenience. It was sacred obligation. The birth of a confederacy. Before this moment, the Akan states were divided, independent, competitive, vulnerable. Osei Tutu, guided by Okomfo Anokye, transformed fragmentation into federation. This was not a loose alliance stitched together for survival. It was a structured confederacy built on constitutional order. At its center stood the Asantehene, but his authority was not absolute. Regional chiefs governed their territories while pledging allegiance to the Golden Stool. Councils of elders debated decisions. Judicial assemblies resolved disputes. Matters of war, diplomacy, and succession required consultation. Power was centralized in sovereignty, yet distributed in governance. If a ruler acted unjustly, he could be removed. If a chief betrayed loyalty, he could be replaced. Kumasi became more than a capital. It became a political nerve center coordinating taxation, diplomacy, legal systems, and defense. Long before European administrators would claim to introduce order to the region, the Ashanti had already built it. And it worked. The strength of the Confederacy was not simply in unity, it was in design. Each chief maintained authority within his territory, but allegiance to the Golden Stool created alignment beyond local ambition. Revenue flowed upward, decisions flowed outward. Disputes between regions were resolved within recognized legal structures rather than through endless warfare. That internal order reduced instability. It allowed the Ashanti to expand influence, negotiate strategically, and consolidate power without fracturing from within. The empire did not survive because it was aggressive. It survived because it was organized. And organization is a form of strength that is often invisible until tested. Gold as leverage. The forests beneath Ashanti soil were rich with gold. But gold alone does not build empire. Organization does. Gold dust functioned as currency, measured with precision through standardized weights. Trade was regulated. Taxation systems were enforced. Trade routes linked the Ashanti to markets across West Africa and toward the Atlantic coast. Portuguese traders arrived, then Dutch, then British. They built coastal forts. But inland control required negotiation, and inland meant gold. European powers quickly realized that access to wealth required recognition of Ashanti authority. Gold-funded architecture, gold-funded regalia, gold-funded defense. But it was structure, not wealth alone, that sustained the empire. Control of gold did more than enrich the Ashanti. It reshaped regional power. Neighboring states understood that influence now radiated from Kumasi. Trade agreements were no longer simple exchanges. They were negotiations with a central authority backed by structure. The empire did not operate as scattered settlements. It operated as a coordinated network. Administrative centers monitored movement, tribute reinforced loyalty. Military readiness discouraged opportunistic rebellion. Power was not displayed loudly. It was maintained steadily. That steadiness created predictability, and predictability created stability. Foreign traders learned quickly that Ashanti diplomacy was calculated. Access could be granted, access could be restricted, terms could shift depending on loyalty and circumstance. This was not isolationism. It was strategic engagement. The Ashanti did not reject the outside world. They managed it. And that management, economic, political, and cultural, reinforced what the Golden Stool symbolized: unity. Because unity is not merely emotional, it is structural, it is administrative, it is defended. And by the 19th century, that unity had become visible, not only in ceremony but in influence. An empire grounded in belief had become an empire respected in reality. The military machine wealth attracts attention. Attention invites conflict. The Ashanti were prepared. Their military structure was disciplined and organized. Armies were divided into specialized divisions, advance guards, main divisions, flanking units, rear guards. Scouts navigated forest terrain with precision. Communication relied on talking drums and horn signals capable of transmitting commands across distance. War was not chaos. It was coordination. Commanders studied terrain. Engagements were calculated. Retreats were strategic. Throughout the 19th century, the Ashanti engaged British forces in multiple wars. They were not a minor kingdom resisting inevitability. They were an organized empire defending sovereignty. The miscalculation. By the late 19th century, British imperial ambitions intensified. After a series of conflicts, the British exiled the Asantewaa and sought to consolidate control. Then came the miscalculation. In 1900, British Governor Sir Frederick Hodgson demanded the Golden Stool. He intended to sit upon it. To British administrators, this was symbolic dominance. To the Ashanti, it was sacrilege. The Golden Stool was never sat upon, not by commoners, not by chiefs, not even by the king, because it did not represent royal privilege. It represented collective identity. To sit upon it would have meant claiming authority over the soul of the nation. The British understood territory. They did not understand spirit, and that difference ignited resistance. Governor Hodgson's demand exposed a cultural divide deeper than politics. To the British, authority was imposed from above. To the Ashanti, authority was inherited through shared spirit. The British saw an object. The Ashanti saw ancestry. They saw furniture. The Ashanti saw foundation. This was not simply diplomatic failure. It was a clash of world views. The War of the Golden Stool. With the king exiled, leadership did not collapse. It transformed. Yaa Asantewaa, Queen Mother of Ejisu, rose. Before hesitant chiefs, she declared, "If you, the men of Ashanti, will not go forward, then we will. We, the women, will fight." This was not symbolic rhetoric. It was mobilization. She unified chiefs, organized resistance, prepared strategy. Her leadership was disciplined. She understood terrain. She understood morale. She understood symbolism. This was not only military confrontation, it was psychological. If the Golden Stool were taken, The empire's spiritual anchor would be broken. If it were protected, identity would survive, even under occupation. In 1900, Ashanti forces laid siege to the British fort in Kumasi. Supply lines were cut. Pressure mounted. The forest became a battlefield of endurance. Eventually, British reinforcements arrived. The uprising was suppressed. Yaa Asantewaa was exiled. The Ashanti territory was annexed into the British colony. But the British never captured the Golden Stool. It was hidden, protected, untouched. They seized land, but they never possessed the soul. The annexation of Ashanti was presented in London as another imperial victory. But on the ground, it marked something more complex. The British inherited territory, not allegiance. They imposed administration, not loyalty. And while colonial governance altered structures of authority, it never replaced the symbolic center of Ashanti identity. Because sovereignty imposed from outside is always provisional, and provisional power is never absolute. Endurance colonial rule altered administration, but Ashanti identity endured. Traditional authority adapted rather than disappeared. Today, the Ashanti Kingdom continues in ceremonial authority within modern Ghana. The Golden Stool remains sacred, untouched, unseated, because some power cannot be legislated away. Reflection empires are often measured by territory, by monuments, by victories. But the Ashanti Empire leaves a different lesson. True sovereignty does not begin in land. It begins in identity. The Golden Stool was never about gold. It was about continuity. Political systems change. Borders shift. Empires rise and fall. But when a civilization anchors itself in shared belief, its foundation survives occupation. You can conquer territory. You can exile rulers. You can redraw maps. But you cannot take a soul that refuses to surrender, because some empires fall, but some foundations cannot be taken. And when a people guard their spirit, they are never truly conquered. This is Echoes of Africa. Like and subscribe.